Now moving away, he wins it. Landy going away.
So I was thinking the other day, a cool video maybe to make would be something about the basics of what makes your car fast or just quick in general. And there is a difference. Quick is how fast it accelerates. How fast means like top speed, like 240 miles per hour. So there is a difference.
Qualifying is a unique problem. He must cut his elapsed time for the quarter mile as low as possible by finding exactly the right combination of hundreds of factors in less than a minute of actual racing.
So one of the very first factors is your power to weight ratio, which means how much horsepower you make per pound, which comes up to like a ratio like 9 pounds for every horsepower that your car makes. And obviously the less pounds per horsepower is going to be a better advantage. So you want to have the least amount of weight per horsepower as possible. Like Randy's car, it's lighter than my car because it's a GTO and it's like 500 pounds lighter, and also makes like a good 100 wheel horsepower more. So his ratio is going to be something like maybe 8 pounds for every 1 horsepower, where my car is like 10 pounds for every 1 horsepower. When you have less weight to push around, that means your horsepower can do more of what it's supposed to do, which is get your car moving. So obviously, you get that ratio kind of closer to a 1-to-1 as you possibly can. Obviously, that's not going to be realistic unless you have like 2,500 horsepower. Obviously, to make your car faster, you need to make more power, right? And it might sound simple, but there's a lot that actually goes into that. And I mean, I've talked about it a little bit already on this channel, just about making like your proper combo to make everything work together. But yeah, I mean, the first thing everybody really does to make more power is heads, cam, and intake. Those are like the 3 biggest mods just to getting more air and fuel like mixing together to make more bigger explosions. You gotta make more power somehow, right? The other way is forced air, which is obviously turbos or superchargers, which is basically just doing that. It's cramming more air into the engine to make bigger explosions that makes more power. And there's just a ton of research and different talking points on that specifically, but those are just like the very super basic ways to make more power, like with your engine. And for most forced air applications, there's only so much boost you can actually take before you start running into problems and things start exploding, which is not fun and it's very expensive. So definitely make sure you read up on that before you decide to start cramming a bunch of air into your engine. Another very affordable, relatively speaking, option to making more power is just start spraying it with some nitrous. And a lot of engines you can do like 80, maybe even like 120 horsepower shot of nitrous without really doing any kind of damage. But again, you need to do some research on that. Try to find out what your engine specifically can take before you go and just like shoot 200 shot of nitrous into your engine. So in helping with that power to weight ratio, we've talked about the power part of it. Now what about the weight part of it? The weight part of it, can be simple, I guess. It just depends on how much of a daily driver your car is. Because I mean, I can take almost everything out of this freaking thing and lose quite a bit of weight, but out of the take all the trim out, like everything useful, I need to take like pretty much every seat out besides mine. I could put in a racing seat to replace this one because it has like all the power motors in it and all that stuff, so I can get rid of all that crap. I can get rid of this steering wheel and put in a racing steering wheel maybe. I get rid of the air conditioner, I can get rid of the heat, I get rid of the radio, I can get rid of all kinds of stuff. But again, that's all going to make it less of like a daily driven kind of car and more of like an actual gutted race car. But it does make a huge difference. If you can figure out a way to drop like 400 pounds from your car, it's going to make a pretty big difference. Factor number, what, 3, 4, something like that, is gearing. And gearing, I think, is something that a lot of people maybe don't really consider a lot, or they kind of just brush it under the rug. They're like, gearing's not that important. gearing's pretty damn important, because if you throw in like a huge cam, or you put like an aftermarket intake manifold, headers, all this stuff, but then you still have gear, like the stock gearing, it could be very detrimental to your overall combo. And I think that a lot of cars really do just have good gearing nowadays. Like, they can have the best of both worlds. It can be more like fuel efficient, but also kind of performance at the same time, if that makes any sense. Because you can have a good gearing in the rear end differential, but then a transmission gearing can kind of do the best of both worlds. You can have the fuel efficiency and performance, especially with like a 10-speed automatic or something. 6-speed manuals, like, those are pretty much like the golden standard. So I mean, you're pretty much good for the most part, but there are a lot of cases where you do need to look at your gearing. It is a huge thing, especially if you're trying to rev up to a higher RPM power band. Like, if you're trying to get up to like 3,000 plus and you got factory gearing like this car does, you might need to look into something a little more aggressive. Suspension is another big thing. If you lower your car like a lot of people like to do, it's cool. I think it looks great, and actually I want to lower my car too. But if you do, you still have to consider making everything work the way you want it to. And this is specifically for like drag racing. So if you're not like super into drag racing, or you don't care about being fast, even though you just spent thousands of dollars making your car fast, which seems kind of stupid, but if you want your car to be fast properly, then you have to look at your suspension too and make sure that it's working with your overall goal of making your car faster. You got to have weight transfer, and lowering it kind of like stiffens it, lowers it, makes the center of gravity lower and all that. So it makes it harder for the weight to transfer from the front to the rear. You don't have any suspension travel really either. So you, like in a stock setup, you know, it sits higher and all that, it has more travel. It allows your weight to shift back to the rear tires, and that's where you need it. You need the weight on the rear tires, because that's what's making contact with the ground and putting the power to the ground. So very important thing to consider. And there's different springs you can get, different shocks you can get, all kinds of shit to make it so your weight transfers more efficiently to the back. So I know you can do it with lowered suspension. You just got to do a little bit of research. That's pretty much it. And the very last thing, and maybe the most important thing on making your car quicker, is traction. Traction is a big deal. Like, you can have an 800 horsepower car. If you got like 245s all the way around, you're probably not going to go anywhere super fast. You're just going to melt your tires off. So traction is super important. Like, just for these cars in particular, you can go significantly faster in a quarter mile, or quicker in a quarter mile, just by putting on like drag radials. Or I mean, you can just go full race and put on some slicks or whatever. But like, if you get really sticky tires on a stock Hemi 5.7, and especially if you do like a tune, like a PCM tune, like, you can get into the 12s. I've seen numerous people get into the 12s with a stock RT or otherwise stock RT. Pretty crazy. But it really just underlines how important traction actually is. Like, your 60 foot time is super important for the rest of the quarter mile. It's like, if you start out like shit, you're really slow right off the bat, that just sets the rest of your quarter mile in front of you. It's like, if you start out bad, the rest of it's going to be bad pretty much. So the stronger you can start out, the stronger you can finish. Just put it that way. Talking about all these things really makes you kind of put everything into perspective though, because a lot of this isn't really that realistic, you know? You start stripping everything out of your car and you start making it really aggressive on the street. It's just, you can live with it if that's your thing on the street, but a lot of people will think that they can live with it. They do it and they're like, man, that sucks. Like, I shouldn't have done all that crap to my car. So there is a little bit of a reality check involved here. It's like, you have to think about what you really want to do with your car. If you want to make it fast, you want to do all these things, then go for it. But just realize it's not going to be like super friendly on the street. It's going to be the like street manners of the car are going to be completely different. So that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think. Is there something that I might have missed? Something that's like a huge factor that I didn't even really consider? What are you doing with your car? What kind of builds are you guys doing? Let me know. Follow us, please subscribe, like the video, and I hope you guys have a good one. Thanks.
Thickening smog chokes the dying California sun. Noises, engines and voices seem far away, muffled by the strain of hundreds of races.